Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch.
And I'm Pops.
And welcome back. You know, we've been recording these episodes sort of before free agency began, before the Super Bowl began. This is the first one that's really being recorded for this coming week with the AFC North, which is great because free agency has been off with a bang for the past 2 weeks or past 2 days. Like, I mean, I think said it at the text thread, Pops, that it's probably the most exciting free agency period that you've been in for a while. I would have to agree. What sort of stuck out to you about free agency so far?
Man, I think for me, probably the biggest one is, let's talk the Atlanta Falcons real quick. The amount of money that they gave to Kirk, I talked about on the show when we talked NFC North about the Vikings probably won't give him that $45 million. And guess what? He got it somewhere. Yeah, he got it somewhere else. And just on top of that, like, they didn't go after Lamar last year because they had questions about Lamar with his sustainability with, how he plays. But then they go sign a dude that's a decade older for the same amount of money a year later. Like, it's kind of interesting to see how desperate the Falcons were. I think Kirk's a great player. I'm not taking that away from him, but the fact that the Falcons, whiffed on Lamar last year and then turn around and spend that same exact cash on Kirk.
For me, I think that's like the consequences of them not paying him last year and then having to go through the whole season without him. And you see what that like the whole year the Falcons were like, we need a quarterback, because it turned out that Desmond Ridder was not our guy. and so I love the deal. I think it surprised a lot of people, myself included. Not that it was like shocking that Cousins went. I just thought that they would have went the much cheaper option of Fields, which
I agree.
I don't know if that was, it wasn't a money thing. Like, they were more than willing to shell out the bucks for Kirk. So it tells me that the Bears must have just wanted a little too much for, Fields. I don't know. And that's, I mean, after 2 days, we're now going into the third day tomorrow. Fields has not moved, which I'm shocked in the sense of all that's happened is his trade value has decreased. And it makes me wonder, like, are the Bears going to move him? Or are the Bears going to trade the pick? Because every day that they don't trade him, I sit back and I go, I think somebody else is going to move into that number one slot, which I do want to bring this up. Do we have so much to talk about? Who knows how much we're going to get in the AFC North? I look back at our last episode of the NFC North. I have, in text threads, I know that you probably, if you've watched enough of the podcast, you've probably seen it. Like, I know I flipped enough. Like, I like CW. I don't like CW. Bears should take him. Bears should trade away. I told in our text thread, I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't touch CW. And for me, it comes down to the off the field, which I think is a huge, I don't even want to say I think. It is a huge piece. Like, it is such a game changer with a dude's personality, how he's going to react with his teammates, how he's going to react with ownership, the business side of things. CW, Caleb Williams, doesn't do any medical tests. First player in the history of the National Football League at the Combine to say, nah, I'm good. He's also not going to do any throwing at the Combine. Did no testing. He met with some teams, and you sort of pointed it out. It was sort of like a I'm on camera more than it was any type of given any, like, there was no positive vibes. There, a lot of stuff that I'm going to say is unproven, because it's just rumor mill, but I will say
Mhm.
it's been on the rumor mill for a lot, which is he wants part team ownership, which the NFL CBA outlaws. Outlaws. You cannot be an owner in a team as part of compensation for playing. And then he's also been, his dad at least, has been pushing this narrative that he does not want to sign a rookie contract. He wants to be signed into a contract, but not under the rookie terms. So
Mhm.
this is AKA Sam Bradford type of deals where, if for those of you who don't really remember, the 2011 timeframe is the last of the big rookie deals. You had rookies, Jamarcus Russell, Sam Bradford was the key one. Signed like $130 million contract as a rookie, $80 million of which fully guaranteed. Like, to put that in perspective, that's what Kirk Cousins just got, pretty much. Like, but he got as a rookie,
Mhm.
and it was getting to the point that teams were like, "Hey, like the rookie contracts are out of whack because we're not able to pay our veterans who've been in the league longer. So we got to cap the rookies and pay them based upon the position that they go in the draft, not what they feel like they're owed." And with all that, I just sort of sit back on the outside and I go, dude, it's giving me the heebie-jeebies, like, about taking this player. Uh, I know you've been on that case all along. What if sort of your big feels in what we've seen with CW since we talked last?
Yeah, I mean, even just I sent that thread yesterday of just Chad Pennington. He wasn't never elevated. I don't think he's necessarily a Hall of Fame guy, but he had a good tenured career in the NFL, and he was talking to CW at the combine, and like just the look on CW's face, like, why is this dude talking to me? Like, had no respect for what Chad Pennington was telling him, which I thought was pretty good advice, for a soon to be rookie to hear from a veteran QB who'd been in the league for a better part of a decade. And man, like, just the body language, and then like I was telling you guys, just playing for the cameras is what it seemed like to me. Huge red flags, obviously, with not doing the medical testing because what's underlying that we don't know about. There's a lot of question marks. That's like, man, I don't know if you take this dude. Like, I'm not going to say he would, be Johnny Manziel level bust, but I mean, it's not looking good just by his antics that he's pulling right now. And, I saw something earlier today, and of course, all my sources are biased because, I follow Bears type of stuff. But there was a news reporter up there in Chicago who was talking, he pulled up a tweet that Caleb Williams didn't do an after game interview against UCLA and just chose not to speak to the media based on his performance of the game. And it's like stuff like that. It's like, dude, you're going to have to do that every game no matter what. Like, you're the star of the team, and then you don't want to even step up to the podium, when you get embarrassed. Like, there's just a lot of question marks that I have where I would much rather stick with Fields because I've said it on here. Like, his first 2 years, he didn't have weapons. Last year was his first year with DJ Moore and an actual weapon on the outside. Like, and they had chemistry. So I want to see them build pieces. I hope that they trade back, and that's kind of where I stand with it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I sit back with the interview thing, because on one hand, I'm like, oh, yeah, you should give your time in the media. On the other hand, Marshawn Lynch being like, I'm just here so I don't get fined. Like, that's one of the greatest things in
Oh,
history. Like,
100%.
it's like this give and take. I think it's more like you're trying to read into CW's personality to figure out, who is this guy? Is this a guy that he's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, am I ready to play pro football? Like, am I going to be committed to being the best player I can be in helping whatever franchise I go to win? I think that's the question that we're asking. But the problem is now that we're having to ask that question, you get the vibes. And I have to bring. I wish he was on tonight, but he's got kid duty with Maul. He said this. He goes, "I feel like this is a bust watch versus bust warning. All the ingredients are there for him to be the biggest bust in history." And that
Mm-hmm.
to me is, I mean, that sums it up. And it's sort of a, I don't, it's not just by his own making. like the media has hyped him up. I've heard the term generational talent thrown around more times this draft than not. But Caleb Williams has sort of done this to himself. He sort of has said there was no other quarterback but me. Like I don't even think I'm not going to go number one. Like he has set himself up that if anything happens, I just sort of sit back and go, you did this to yourself. Like you better come in and sling it from week one on, because everyone's going to be ready to hate on you really hard. But yeah, so that's the CW and a little bit of last week. Free agency. Well, I guess before we get in that past and present real quick, I know good little 10-minute rant to start the show. This is what what's funny is for you at home, this is what we usually do. And then last week we did this and I was like, and even Maul said it, we should have recorded that. That was good stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just, instead of rambling for 10 minutes before we get on, we'll just ramble before we start. All right. You want past or present first?
Let's go present.
Present. All right. This guy, this one's a little bit of I think a little bit better, but we'll find out. For you, this guy plays for LSU, goes to the Ravens, and goes to the Steelers.
Oh, linebacker?
Yep.
Yeah, Patrick Queen.
Patrick Queen, which we're going to get into here in a minute. We're talking NFC North. Huge piece, in my opinion, especially going to a division rival, especially that it's the Steelers. Like, my dad talked when we went up and did the Hall of Fame for the Steelers tribute. They had a whole thing set up. I'm doing an episode on just sort of the review of the Hall of Fame. We'll get to that next week when I publish it. But my dad even talked about how like James Harrison, a lot of like bigger name Steelers have been like, we've lost the Steeler way of being this like tough physical defense. That dude has it. Like,
yeah, he does.
Patrick Queen will be the dude in there that I sit back and I go, yeah, give me that dude. So we'll get into more of that here in a second. But then past, here's a guy that you'll recognize the name, pretty sure. Also defensive player, but played for the Bengals a little bit. Adam Pac-Man Jones. Where did he go to school? He was actually drafted by the Titans, then went and spent a year at Dallas, spent a few years with the Bengals, and then finished up his career with the Broncos. But where did he come out of school?
Was he ACC?
I don't think they were ACC when he came out, and they are not ACC now.
Okay, I was thinking Miami for some reason was the first place I went to.
He's got the personality.
Yeah.
It is a Big 12 school right now. During this time, they were I don't want to say they were beginning to be really good. Like they had a really good like 3 to 4 year stint with some guys on this team, went to a bowl game, beat Alabama. Like they had pieces there that they were extremely talented. They haven't been that team, I would say, for the past decade. They'll surprise some teams every once in a while, but really they've sort of been in the dumps. But a recognizable school name for the Big 12.
Yeah. I would say either right now West Virginia or Oklahoma State. For whatever reason, that's where I'm going.
It's West Virginia. So
West Virginia.
I mean, I remember. Side note, I remember the Titans draft him, and he had this horrific problem in the preseason that before Kadarius Toney, he was Kadarius Toney. He could not field a punt or a kickoff to save his life. And I remember it was a preseason game, and he dropped like 2 or 3 of them, and you would have thought that the fans were going to go yank him off the field. It was the loudest boos for a preseason game I've ever seen. He really struggled with the Titans just because he never got over that hump of the initial struggles. And then when he got on to, out of Tennessee, especially with the Bengals, he played a lot better. But I thought that was two interesting guys, which is good. We were sort of talking about what team to talk about first with the AFC North. We'll go right into it with the Bengals, mainly because they really didn't do a lot outside of, I think, get rid of one of their
Joe Mixon.
better players
Yeah.
than Joe Mixon, and they replaced him with Zach Moss. Like,
yeah, and now they want T. Higgins once out of town as well, which I'm kind of curious if that's like one of those plays, like, well, if you're tagging me, release me, and then wait a little bit and he gets some more money.
here, so okay, we'll see what your opinion is on this. I've seen a ton of rumors, and now I know it's a lot of just fan conjecture, but I've sort of hypothesized this. I get a feeling that they want to go get JJ.
Boys? Yeah.
Yes. And T. Higgins would be a trade. I think the biggest piece is like, well, what do you send up there? Like, because I don't think the Vikings let him go for anything other than a first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Supposedly the Vikings told him, we don't want T. Higgins, but we'll take Joe Burrow, which that's not going to happen. So I have no doubt in my mind that Joe Burrow and Chase Young would free up money for him to be able to come down there. I think they'd all have to be on the same page to make that happen, for all of them to get paid what they'd like to be paid, but also taking a cut so they could all three be together. But until that happens, like the Bengals, you're just sort of like, I don't. I look at the other guys they signed. They signed Mike Gesicki, tight end. They re-signed their other tight end, Drew Sample.
No.
They re-signed, a guard, linebacker. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, they also let another guard walk, I think, in free agency, because I think he got picked up by the Arizona Cardinals, if I remember right.
I believe you are correct. I know in our draft, which hasn't aired yet, for those of you who are watching, well, you'll get to see it because we're airing it tomorrow evening, is I took Amari Mims with Georgia to go in. I think he's extremely athletic. They need a lineman. They have to be able to figure out how to protect Burrow. I just sort of sit back and look at the Bengals right now. That's where I see them going as offensive line. Whether or not that happens, it'd be tough for them not to draft an offensive lineman based upon how free agency has gone right now. The only other big time tackle on the market right now is Tyron Smith, the tackle with the Cowboys. I haven't seen him sign with anyone late. So that's sort of where I'm at with the Bengals. The only other route I could see them possibly go is, well, trading the pick and going and getting somebody, or drafting a wide receiver. But outside of those options, how are you feeling about the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like we've already kind of alluded to, Joe Burrow keeps getting murdered day in and day out. That's their biggest focus that they got to deal with. I mean, their defense is pretty decent. Yeah, they're going to have some holes to fill in this offseason as well. But man, if we could just see Joe Burrow be healthy, man, I would be. It would almost be like the 2021 version that we saw. When they took him to the when he took him to the Super Bowl against the Rams. Like they were just an unbelievable team. And all it took was, I mean, if Aaron Donald didn't get through, he would have had a wide open Jamar Chase that shook Jalen Ramsey on the edge. Like it's just things like that Joe Burrow is a guy who's that franchise quarterback. I mean, you guys said it on the podcast last week, talking about franchise guy. Why not protect him? Like that's the biggest piece for the Zach Moss signing. Yeah, I don't think he's as big of a pound for pound back as Joe Mixon. But the thing for me is, like, look at how decent Moss played while Jonathan Taylor was hurt last season. I mean, he had a solid season, leading the charge there. And then they tried to do a 1-2 split once JT came back. And I mean, it still worked for a little bit. enough for them to be in playoff contention until the Houston Texans bumped them out. But I think mixing with Moss, you're going to see a little bit of a drop off. In those down and distance situations where you could really use a strong back, to get that extra yard that Mixon would do for you. And then the rest, man, it's just plug and play and see what we can see the best options that we can get. T. Higgins, man, like I don't necessarily, that hypothesis that you were coming up with. I don't see a way that Jefferson gets there, but let's be honest. I mean, after they signed Sam Darnold, if I'm Jefferson, I'm taking a pay cut to go play with Joey Burrow and my guy Jamar Chase. I'm sorry, I can make that up in endorsements if you're really concerned with winning, because I would take Burrow over Darnold any day. So we'll see how it plays out. I think Higgins will probably end up staying in town. And if he does, then obviously I don't see the JJ move working out, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the guys I did see that was released, I have not seen him sign with anyone yet. This is a guy that I feel like would fit so well in their system, and they need a third wide receiver if Tyler Boyd moves on. Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
They're going to get him for cheap, which the Bengals need, to plug him in at wide receiver 3 in that combination. I personally like. That'd be someone I'd like to see the Bengals go after. I don't think anyone in the nation that, speaking from a pure football thing, would fight them if they went and got JJ. That would be an offense that I would sit back and be like, sort of like that LSU offense. Good luck. Like, I don't know who you're going to. They didn't need a amazing tight end. I mean, Thaddeus Moss played amazing for them, but they didn't need someone from the standpoint of getting there. But, that's where we're at with them. But then, I mean, going from the Bengals, you take a look at the Browns, which sort of kicked off free agency. I feel like that was the first information we heard, was them trading for Jerry Jeudy. And I'm torn on this. Like, I think Jerry has shown that he can be a tremendous talent, and he's made tremendous plays in college. But at least for me, and I'll let you give your spiel on him, I've never seen a game where I was like, that's the Jerry Jeudy they drafted. Like, he's made some plays, but he's never had that like moment where I was like, that's who they wanted. So do I think that he'll help the Browns? Yeah. Do I think he's this like amazing playmaker? No. Which is why they, it was an exchange for a 5th and a 6th. But what are your trades or thoughts on the trade for Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of for me, it's showing Amari, hey man, you're still our number one guy. In my personal opinion, like, I don't want to get a guy that's going to rock the boat to make you think that you're going to have to fight for your reps. And I mean, up to this point, out of Jerry Jeudy, that's all we've seen, because Courtland Sutton has overshadowed Jerry Jeudy. He's been a solid number 2. I would say. A very very solid number 2 is what I'd use to describe Jerry Jeudy. And until he shows, something that breaks him apart from the rest of the pack, that's what he's going to be. And I mean, Steve Smith, we always joke about it, should be a Hall of Famer. He calls him out. He's like, hey man, you haven't shown anything yet, and it's even after that beef early in the season, Jeudy still hasn't shown up yet. So maybe this will be the break that he needs. And I mean, he's another weapon, because this year we got, hopefully Deshaun Watson's shoulder is healthy. Nick Chubb's coming off of his, what was it, a knee injury?
Everything in that leg.
Yeah. So coming off of the leg injury, you've got the weapons back on offense. Now let's see how we tie them all together. I mean, and you got Njoku, man, like, it is so crazy. I remember watching that Hard Knocks with Hugh Jackson when they first got Njoku. You're like, this dude's just an athlete. And like, he struggled, trying to find how to catch a ball. But like, these past 2 seasons, like, if you're needing a tight end and you can't get Kelsey or anything else like that, like, getting Njoku, like, just let him hang out and, go pick him up late in your fantasy draft because, I mean, he's been a dude, for the last 2 seasons, even after burning his face off. Like, that dude's playing his face off, and so you've got 3 targets now on top of Nick Chubb out of the backfield. And, I mean, even Jerome Ford, I mean, dude, the
Plays
weapons
well.
there. Yeah, exactly. The weapons that are there in Cleveland, and, oh, yeah, you got one of the league's best defense. Like, Cleveland has the utmost ceiling, I believe, for the AFC North in this upcoming season, in my personal opinion. Besides, obviously the Ravens, but we'll talk about that in a second.
The Browns are this past year's Lions. That's what they have the opportunity to be. Like,
for sure.
I think that people know that they could be a force, but until they put it together, like the Lions did this last year, teams aren't going to see that. On paper, when you sit back and you look, just like you said, you got a really two, good running back combo with Ford and Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Watson at quarterback, the guy that you've paid all the millions to, fully guaranteed. And now you have Njoku, Cooper, Judy. On paper, the Browns have their pieces.
Exactly.
They have what they need. What they go do in the draft, yet to be seen. They can always help their defense. They could get another wide receiver if one's sitting there that they go, hey, we love this guy for number 3 position, and to sub in, sub out. I understand that. Like, for me, the Browns in this division have the most opportunity outside of the Ravens. The Ravens we'll get to here in a second as you sort of talk to. I like the Browns because their defense. Like, Myles Garrett's a wrecking train. Like, he won games single-handedly last year. So for me, the Browns go ahead.
Let's even talk about just the fact, like, look who their quarterback was last season, and how they still made it to the playoffs on the back of that defense. Like, they relied, obviously Deshaun, he struggled. He showed a couple of glimpses, and then all of a sudden that shoulder's ailing again. Then they bring in PJ Walker, and then they get Joey Flacco to lead them down the stretch. Like, and I think there was somebody else in between there that played a couple of games. But long story short, like, they didn't have a quarterback. They didn't have their number 1 running back. And guess what? They still made the wild card. Like, you put all them pieces together, and dude, like, now Patrick Queen's out of the middle. You just got Roquan to worry about with the Ravens. Like, they've got a hole missing up there in Baltimore, which, leave it wide open for Cleveland to try to step up and take the division.
Yeah. The Browns have the ability, but it'll be the same questions that we asked the Lions. Can you overcome this history? Like, can you do what no other team's done? And when the times matter, because let's all be honest, I think everyone sort of thought they were going to beat the Texans. I mean, Vegas did. Vegas had them, I think, as like 5.5 point favorite going into that game. It was more people are questioning whether or not Cleveland was going to cover than if the Texans were going to win. Yep. And they got blown out. Now, yes, Flacco threw some, pretty horrific interceptions, but from that standpoint, you just sort of sit back and you go, yeah, I see how the Browns should be in the top of the division competing for that division crown with the Ravens, in my opinion. But before we get to the Ravens, let's get to the Steelers.
Yeah, sounds good.
So Steelers, you had something else?
Well, I was just looking kind of already who they picked up, for the Cleveland. They also added Nyheim Hines from Buffalo. So they're adding to the running back room as well. And they've picked up a couple linebackers. Jordan Hicks out of Minnesota, pretty strong player. And they re-signed Zadarius Smith. I mean, yeah, I think we've already kind of hit on it, but I was just double checking all their position moves that they've already made in this early free agency. But yeah, let's move on and talk about the cheapest starting quarterback in NFL history.
Or as you said, Steel City, let's weld. So, instead, you almost spitting up your Dr. Pepper here. I guess since I didn't do a good job of it with the Browns, let me just go ahead and say for the Steelers, they go out, get the quarterback that we were just talking about, Russell Wilson from the Broncos. Broncos are paying him $37 million this year. They get Russell Wilson for a steal at $1.2 million. The big thing was they agreed to a 3-year, $41 million deal with Patrick Queen, starting linebacker from the Ravens. And then they did trade starting wide receiver Deontay Johnson and a swap of the 2024 7th-round picks for Panthers corner Deontay Jackson. So someone to pair. It's funny because in our draft, we had them take a corner. So the Steelers go out and fill that need to get on the opposite side of Porter Jr., which is great. I mean, is Russ going to cook? Like, I've seen so many memes of like steel plants exploding this whole like week after the news. Tomlin will do what's best for the team. Mm-hmm. I think that at the end of the day, as much as Russ has not shown up with the Broncos, I will also say, in my opinion, he's better than Trubisky, he's better than Trubisky. He's better than Rudolph, both of whom are no longer on the team, and he's better than Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I agree.
From that standpoint, last year, those three guys still got the Steelers into the playoffs and still finished with a winning record. Like, Russ has the potential to make the Steelers better. And I think the Steelers being where they're at in the draft, based upon, I think a lot of teams that are going to reach for a quarterback, the Steelers will probably fill a position in need with wide receiver in the draft in the first round. Just like someone like Xavier Worthy or Donnie Mitchell, someone's going to be there that shouldn't be there at that position. And also, like, when you think about the Steelers, think about Pickens. Think about Deontay. Like, they didn't go, I don't even think, let me look it up real quick, but I'm pretty sure Deontay Johnson was not a high pick in the draft. Mm-hmm. So you sit back and look at that. The Steelers have sort of always,
huh? Who are you talking about not being a high pick?
Deontay Johnson. He was a third round. Yeah, third round pick. And Pickens wasn't a first round pick either. I think Pickens went later in the draft out of Georgia. Their scout has found guys later in drafts that do very well for the Steelers at the position of wide receiver. So I think the Steelers will be fine. They'll find their wide receiver. The biggest question is that offense. Can they score points? And it will be on Russell Wilson. Like, because now they don't have a backup outside of Kenny Pickens, old midget hands. So, I mean,
and
for me, though,
for the running back.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. On the opposite side of the football, Patrick Queen's going to bring it. Like, I think that helps TJ Watt out immensely. Like, having a guy like him in the middle will make that entire defense better. So, for the Steelers, that's a huge win. They still, I think, they need health with TJ, Minka. You got Patrick Queen. You got Porter Jr. on one side, Deontay Jackson on the other. Who knows who else they may possibly go out and get. But from that standpoint, Steelers defense looking pretty good. Like, I don't want to say high on the Steelers. I'm mediocre at best because of Russell Wilson in the past 2 years. But at the same time, Russ wasn't having a terrible statistical season last year.
Yeah.
Who's that to blame? I don't know. You know? What are your thoughts?
That's kind of my thing, man. Like, you go back to the last couple of years that he was in Seattle, and, you know, whether he was missing DK or he's missing Tyler Lockett, like, man, you watch when he was with the Broncos, too, those critical plays, you know, those third and down situations, like, or third and short, like, he's just not connecting and making those plays. You know, and that's the thing that I see is, like, he's taking a lot more sacks, almost kind of like the Shadur Sanders effect. Like, he's holding on to the ball too long because he doesn't want to turn it over, but then it ends up he's getting a sack and he's just not able to move like he used to get out of it all the time. That's kind of what I see because, like, just like you said, he statistically last year, I think he was over 3,000 yards and he was like 26-8. So 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That's pretty good. When you look at a quarterback statistic and you're like, that's not Russ Wilson, like the dude that we've been seeing on the Broncos the last 2 years. Like, but I think it is, man. Like, I think we will see, kind of the same Russ. And I really kind of hope, just for the sake of his reputation and how everything played out in Denver, of him being a prima donna, him getting his posse into the locker room, getting their own, like, their own office per se in the team building, like all that kind of stuff. That was just like, this is who Russell is, like not inviting people to his birthday party or whatever. Like, I just hope that can all fade away, just for the sake of who he was a decade ago, just out balling, with Marshawn and the old Seahawks, the Legion of Boom, because it would be good for the Steelers as well. Like, that city is tired of being mediocre. Like, 500, like, yeah, it's fantastic to be there, but we've said it on previous podcasts, like, you don't want to just be 500, get in the middle of the pack in the first round, and having no cap to work with to make moves to make that team better. I think, just like you said, like, Kenny Pickett's got 6 touchdowns to his whole name for his career, I think. And, like, Russ is going to throw that after the first 3 weeks. And I definitely see
Joe Flacco had more.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Flacco had more in the second half of last season than Kenny Pickett's had in his entire career.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, Russ is definitely going to be an upgrade. He's got running backs out of Warren. And is Najee coming back? They gave Najee money, didn't they?
Yeah, Najee will be back next year.
Yeah, and I just saw this. Guess who they're looking at for Deontay Johnson's replacement? You said him about 10 minutes ago.
Hunter? Renfrow?
Tyler Boyd.
Oh, Tyler Boyd. I mean,
yeah, so there's some mutual interest there.
I can see it. I will give Russ his credit on this. One of the biggest things that we said about Russ was Russ willing to humble himself and take less money to go to a team to prove himself. And he did. And I'm going to give Russell Wilson credit for that, because he could have easily been like, no, if you want me, you're going to pay me $15 million. Like, that's what this other team paid. Like, you're going to pay me too. And he didn't. Mm-hmm. So he's betting on himself to say, look, I'm going to play a year at Denver for $1.2 million. And if this works out, I'll probably get another big payday. And if not, I'm out of the league. Like,
exactly.
Because no one's going to pick him up. So exactly. I'm in the same boat as you. Like, I have hope that he shows up and they can relight some of the fire. The only thing that I sit back with the Steelers is like, if there's one thing the Steelers were known for last year, it was a problem at offensive coordinator. Like, they fired Canada. Mm-hmm. They had issues. And until they get that's not the situation for Russ that I feel like you want to walk into as one that you're like, dude, I don't know if, like, we're going to be calling the best plays here. We'll see. Now, moving on to the team that, when I was looking at past and present players, the first thing that, when I saw one of the bigger news of free agency, the first thing that took me back to was that 1997 version of N64 NFL Blitz. Was, dude, having Derrick Henry in that blacked out Ravens jersey with that chrome visor, dude, that I don't even remember many run plays in NFL Blitz. I think, except like power, I'd run that every play. Like, the Ravens are just, we were talking about it. In one sense, I don't think Henry's great with the lateral moves, but I think that if they just allow Henry to do sort of a typical fullback Surface Academy dive, where it's like, hey, he's going up the middle, you better have guys to stop him. But if anyone collapses, Lamar's taking it and running, that can be a huge threat. The only thing that I sit back and hold back on that is based upon the Chiefs game, how poorly Lamar ran. You're getting to this territory to be able to use Henry in this offense to the level of running that I think it needs to be. Lamar has to commit to going full speed. And being that Lamar that won the first MVP, not this MVP, that's just where I'm at. For them, like I just talked about, 2 years, $16 million contract with Henry. They bring back Nelson Aguilar. They get their defensive lineman, Justin Mubaki, back for a 4-year deal. And then they re-signed Malik Harrison, a linebacker of the team. Those are the big points of emphasis so far. But, I sort of talked about the NFL blitz of Henry. What are your thoughts with them getting Henry and where the Ravens are looking?
Yeah, I mean, think about, the Ravens offense, pretty much since they got Lamar, it's been run heavy and teams still haven't been able to stop it. And I think that's all that we're going to continue to see. Like, I really hope, I told you guys this in the text message as soon as we found out that this deal was done. It's like, I just hope Derrick Henry stays healthy. Like, I want to see this team in their full potential. I did see a meme. It was when Derrick Henry threw the jump pass against the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs. They said, well, at least they finally got a player who can pass in the playoffs. And I thought that was
saw that meme.
I thought that was so funny. But, Derrick Henry has been the most feared running back. Whether you think that or not, he's the biggest dude. He's the fast, like his acceleration is ungodly. And like you just watch his off-season workout videos, you're like, no, I don't want to tackle him. Like, 10 million or get trucked, to get trucked by Derrick Henry, like I'll be thinking twice before, I sign that check for 10 million. Like, this dude's going to send me about 10 yards, running full speed at me. And I love it. They play smash. They're going to adapt to play smash mouth football. Like, they got Picard. Is that his name? The fullback, Ricard Picard.
And they still have J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, and they still got Dobbins out of the backfield as well. So, I mean, man, they got so many weapons that they can use. Also with that fullback, like he hits that linebacker, who's filling the gap? Like, man, this offense, their run game, I will say, has just opened up a brand new potential, like you said. Because hey, Lamar pulls it back because the end bites down. They're dangerous. Now, are they going to get somebody on the outside, to help out with Zay Flowers? Because Duvernay's gone now. OBJ's probably not coming back. You mentioned Aguilar. Sometimes can be a risk, but we'll see. I think they could still probably use somebody else on the outside as well to be a pass catcher. But Lamar's also got to be able to throw him the ball. So on the defensive side, dude, who's going to fill the gap for Patrick Queen? Like him and Roquan, scary. Like you just kind of go back and thinking, about Ray Lewis days. Like I'm not saying Roquan's to that level yet, but he's moving there. Like just his style of play, he's in on every tackle. It seems like, Patrick Queen was the same way. Like they were just a strong 1 and 2 in the position of linebacker. And I'll be curious to see who they fill that position with because there's a big gap to fill. But all those defenses are always going to be good coming out of Baltimore. So, yeah, I digress.
The linebacker thing, the only thing that I sit back and look at is having 2 good linebackers, I would say, is a rarity. Like outside of those 2, it's Fred Warner and Greenlaw and San Fran. And outside of those 2 guys, like I don't see that 2 combo linebacker to the star level that the Ravens had, which I think is part of the reason that they're like, hey, if we're going to take a cut somewhere, we'll keep one of these guys and we'll let the other guy walk. Like, just because of free agents, or really because of the cap, like you have to be able to figure out how to manage some of it. I sit back, you look at it. They've already paid Lamar. Lamar's has got his money. Zay Flowers looks amazing. You got a few more years of him on a rookie contract before you're going to have to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
It frees up money to go that, I don't know if Javanian Clowney's going to come back. You need another edge guy that safe, or not just a safety. The corners of Baltimore are old. They're going to have to look to address that in the draft. In my opinion, though, the reason that the Ravens have been so successful is they draft very, very well, especially on the defensive side of the football. They will find guys that fit their scheme, that do exactly what they need, and they do it well, which is why you look at the division. It's why Harbaugh's been there for as long as he has. And it's why Tomlin's been there as long as they have. Like, both of those organizations have said, hey, we're going to give you the keys. It's not a 2-year game plan. It's a career game plan. You guys know what you're doing. Build around it. I don't worry about Baltimore. Like, for me, getting Henry is huge. Like, I hope they run the offense just like you said. If they line up Henry behind Picard and they're running power ice, like, dude, I'm telling you right now, I still remember when Henry first started with the Titans coming alive. He was almost cut after his first year. And it's because it was Mariota. And they were running this zone read, and Henry didn't do well. But when Mariota got hurt, they put Blaine Gabbert in. And under Blaine Gabbert, they went under center, and Henry was running downhill. And like you said, every guy on defense is like, yo, dog, I'd like to play in this league for longer. I'm making a business decision. Like, you would see corners go to his side and then try to tackle his ankles. I don't blame him. Like,
I mean, he made Josh Norman look like a little child.
Dude, he threw Josh Norman like, a frisbee in the backyard. Just, I mean, he weighs Henry. I mean, there will be no better pitcher in college football, in my opinion, of Henry standing next to Mark Ingram, making him look like a child. You're like, dude, Mark Ingram is a grown man. Like, this is a starter of the NFL at the position of running back, and Henry looks like, it looked like Mark Ingram was in elementary school as a Make-A-Wish kid standing there in the national championship. They didn't have to do Mark Ingram that dirty with that pitcher. But from that standpoint, like, the Ravens have the pieces. Like, to me, this is very similar. Just, I know we're talking AFC North. We didn't talk about the other big free agency signing. This is very similar to me, like with Saquon fitting the Eagles. Like, both of these situations, I go, you nailed that position. Like, for a free agency signing, home run. And I think getting Henry at the deal that they got him, tremendous. Like, you really didn't pay over.
What are you doing, Jerry? Like, you're sitting here swinging and missing on probably the best running back you could have had since Emmitt Smith, and you lost it.
Well, I don't know if you saw, the other guy they were eyeing was Zach Moss, and they said his $4 million a year was too steep. And I just, dude, nothing. I will say, the memes on the Cowboys this week have been tremendous. It's like, who the Cowboys signed? No one. Oh, we forgot one person, our long snapper. Like, dude, and that, I like him. I mean, he's a good runner, but that video of that little kid playing with all those guys, and it's like Deuce Vaughn lining up for the Cowboys next year, is amazing. That's gold.
Yeah, dude.
For me, the AFC, I think the AFC North, though, get your take on this, is the greatest threat to Mahomes in terms of a three-peat.
Oh, for sure. Like, we'll go back a couple episodes. Buffalo's rebuilding. They kicked Gabe Davis to the road. So they said, hey, we're sticking with Stephon. Like, there's only going to be nothing but drama coming out of that. You know, they were only able to re-sign Deion Dawkins. They let Mitch Morse walk. You know, so they're losing guys from their offensive line. So Buffalo is going to be, in my opinion, you know, we talked about before. I think the door shut on their Super Bowl chances, and I hold that still true. You know, Josh Allen's a baller, but he's not going to have the guys around him. You know, Miami, you know, until they show that they can show up or win the big games, like they're not going to be a threat. So who else do we have left? Like, you know, you look at last year, it was Baltimore, and then there was Cleveland, and then we got, you know, we'll see what Houston has to bring, you know, second year of tape with CJ Stroud. Let's see, you know, if anybody's able to make moves to shut him down. So there's potential, you know, from Houston. But yes, I agree. Between Cleveland and Baltimore, and maybe a sleeper team out of the Steelers, you know, they'll be able to. I think out of those teams, and let's not forget, I didn't include the Bengals, which, you know, if we remember Joey Burrow coming off his first knee injury on his rookie season, like I can't wait to see how he comes back after sitting out all last year. You know,
Well,
it's
the Bengals have owned Mahomes except for one
yeah,
game.
exactly.
Like,
You know, they call it Burrowhead.
I will say I did not look this up before asking this question, but when you were talking, I looked it up. Chiefs opponents in 2024, they got to play every team in the AFC North.
Yeah, all the AFC North teams.
Oh man, I mean, the Chiefs also have to play the Niners, the Eagles, the Bears, and the NFC East. So I mean,
What
it's gonna be.
what how many are on the road?
It doesn't say yet.
Okay.
Well, let me take a look. Sorry, this one wasn't saying that, but let me.
Yeah, because I know some of the teams have already put out their home and away schedule.
Yeah, they do show that. So the Chiefs will host the following teams. They'll get the Ravens at home and the Bengals at home. So they'll have to go to the Browns and to the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Their other big away teams, they got to go play the Bills away. They've got to play the Niners away, and then the Panthers and Falcons. So at least Kirk Cousins will get a good chance in Atlanta. And then at home, they've got to play the Bucks, the Saints, the Texans, the Broncos, their normal AFC West, and then Bengals, Ravens.
Dude,
So
I tell you what, besides the Broncos and the Saints, like the Chiefs got their work cut out for them next season. You know, just based off of the moves we've already seen. Dude, they're going to have a tough road ahead of them. Now, I think they're going to be fine. You know, they're still going to be a playoff team. I'm not concerned about that. But as far as 3P goes, those quite the opponents you got to get through to get to the get a good record.
as long as they get into the playoffs, they will be. Yeah, all bets are off. Like,
yeah,
I learned that this last year. Like, dude,
well,
I thought,
yeah, dude. Like I said Miami like a dum dum. You know, in my first episode, I said Miami's going to beat them. You know, then I said the Bills were going to beat them.
I said the Bills and then the Ravens, and I was like, and then for the Super Bowl, I was like, nope. I was like, no, if I've lost, I'm 0-2 on this. I ain't doing this again. It's interesting because I guess we can trail off this episode since some of these we haven't talked about some other big free agents. Like, yes, they get Chris Jones back, but outside of him, like there's still the possibility that they may or may not bring back Ladarius Sneed. They're, you know, they tagged him, but who knows how that's going to work out going forward. There's still a lot of, you know, the draft hasn't happened yet, and I only say that because players get moved. Like, there's just times where it's like, hey, you want this pick? We want that guy. And they're like, dude, in the long-term strategy of paying guys, I'm going to ship this guy off. I'll find somebody else. You guys pay him that buttload of money. We'll figure it out. Like, the draft will change some things for these teams in huge ways. What's the other big? I mean, the whole running back market really got shifted. Like, I was pretty surprised by the running back. Let me pull up the text of all the running backs and where they went, because that was sort of remarkable.
Yeah, I agree. Like this year being the running back swap of the century, I thought it was a pretty cool meme. They were talking like, "Hey, could you imagine with free agency if you only got to see the moves on week one? When they ran out of the tunnels for warm ups." I was like, this past year, I would not have believed anything that I saw. Based on how many moves have already been made this season.
100%. We talked about Henry to the Ravens. Joe Mixon went to the Texans. Uh, Aaron Jones, no longer a Packer. He's now a Viking. Zach Moss is a Bengal. Saquon is an Eagle. Josh Jacobs went and took Aaron Jones's role. He's now a Packer. Austin Eckler plays for the Commanders now. Tony Pollard's with the Titans. DeAndre Swift with the Bears. Devin Singletary with the Giants. Gus Edwards with the Chargers. And Antonio Gibson is with the Patriots. I mean, I know we were talking about it at the beginning of the show with the NFC North. I like the DeAndre Swift. Like, I totally get from a standpoint of a Bears fan having Saquon or Josh Jacobs is sexier in terms of the appeal of the name and the performance. However, I think for the money and how well Swift plays, the Bears win in the long run. I think they're able to invest money in other places.
Yeah, just like that last sentence you said, like, we were able to pick up Gerald Everett already, so we've got another tight end. Like, we're signing linemen. We just signed one from the 49ers today, that played for Eberflus at Indy. Like, man, there's just so many things that the Bears are doing to move in the right direction, and it's kind of I don't want to get optimistic because I'll end up being Ron Burgundy in a phone booth crying in a glass case of emotions if they do draft CW. But from what I'm seeing right now, I find it hard to believe that that's the direction that they're going with all the moves that they're making to already build that team. And hey, you know what? If they're building that team for CW, then he's going to walk into a better situation than Fields had. But if we're keeping Fields, oh, dude, like he's already in that system. Yes, he'll have a new OC, but like it'd be hard not to be excited for that team, especially coming off of a 7-10, last season with some games that you should have won. You're not getting blown out like you were Eberflus and Matt Nagy's last year and Eberflus's first year. So man, I'm excited.
Since we're talking about it, we just finished Tennessee North, and I almost want to. It's like you want to go back and record some things. I'm not a huge fan of the Josh Jacobs signing. And it's not because of Josh Jacobs. It's because I don't think there was anything wrong with Aaron Jones. Like, Aaron Jones is running great.
Yes.
Like, I think it was Matt LaFleur didn't like Aaron Jones, and he finally was able to get rid of him, and he brought in Josh Jacobs. But the problem was, I think Aaron Jones runs all over the Packers with the Vikings. Now, I want to say that if Sam Darnold plays well, then he'll run all over him. Like, they have the potential. Like, I don't like that move on the Packers to just get rid of a guy that, like, he was tearing up San Fran. Like, the Packers they beat the snot out of Dallas. They go into San Francisco and have them have every reason to beat them. And if they had to go play the Lions, I probably would have given the edge to the Packers just because of how well they played the Lions throughout the year. Like, I just don't know about that. Like, in terms of, do I think he's going to play well? Yeah. Was it worth it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the part too. Is like, you look at it, it's almost a cardinal sin to go to your division rivals, and he's like, hey, I'm taking this show 2 hours up the road. I'll see you twice a year. Like, you could definitely see the vindictive side of the deal. If I'm Aaron Jones, injuries have been an issue for him, in years prior. But man, he is such a stud when he's out there on the field. And honestly, I think his quads are bigger than Saquon's. Like, I mean, that dude's just as big. And with him and AJ Dillon, that 1-2 punch that they had, yeah, it had to be a personality issue in my opinion, because you could have got Jones a lot cheaper than you could get Jacobs.
I mean, Jones, I'm looking, he signed a 1-year, $7 million deal with the Vikings. And since we're talking the Vikings, and you sent it out earlier that I get that he got paid more for $10 million. As of right now, I mean, that's sort of their guy. Like, it's not going to be Josh Dobbs. It's going to be I think it's Sam Darnold's job. It's sort of setting up, in my opinion. I've heard this thrown around that it looks more and more that I really think the Vikings are going to draft a quarterback in the first round. Like, whether it be Penix, whether it be Bo Nix, or JJ McCarthy, that's who they're going to go get. Man, because I don't think any of the other three guys are going to be there unless the Vikings trade up.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something if the Bears let them go number one and took JJ?
Dude, my thing is, like, I look at Sam Darnold, and yeah, he had, the years at USC, but like, or was it just 1 year? Did he do one and done? But like, he just was not, and Maul will probably crucify me for this, but like, I just didn't see it out of him, there at USC. And then, he ends up being number one. Was he number one or was he number three? Whatever number he was to the Jets. He didn't show up there, which granted they were still rebuilding. But then he goes to Carolina, gets slaughtered again. And, I mean, he's already been a journeyman, and he's only been in the league for 5 years. So. Dude,
the thing about... I'll give Sam Darnold some grace.
Yeah.
I'll give him grace. Like, when you think about the Jets, it wasn't the, the current I mean, that they were a joke. Like, now he will forever live behind that Monday night. I'm seeing Ghost, like, which I put so much on playing for the Jets. Like, he's one of those guys that we talked about in the franchise quarterbacks of like, how does this guy turn out if he goes to Kyle Shanahan his first year instead of getting put what he went through? When he was at the Panthers, I think a lot of people forget this. He had a little bit of a stint at the beginning of a season with the Panthers where they were on fire. Like, he could do no wrong, looked really good, and then it fell apart. And at the same time, I look and I go, well, he had like Matt Rule and like, you look at the Panthers organization when he went there, that was much of a dumpster fire as the Jets. Like, there's a reason the Panthers had a number one pick this year. They were worst team in football. They gave it to the Bears. The Panthers have butchered this. I don't know if you saw that graphic. The Rams offered them last season 2 first-round picks and like a 4th round for Brian Burns. They ended up trading him for, I think, a 3rd-round pick. Hold on. Let me double check. Yeah. Like, I saw that and I was just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, they, in exchange for a 2024 2nd and 5th round pick. Like, the Rams had offered them 2 first rounds. They give up their best defensive lineman. They give up their best running back in his rookie contract to the Niners in Christian McCaffrey. They give up their best wide receiver in DJ Moore to the Bears, like, and a 1st-round pick. They missed up on an opportunity to get CW. I sit back and look at the Panthers, dumpster. So now he goes to San Fran. I think that sitting for a whole year under Shanahan only helped him.
Oh, for sure.
We'll see.
And that's the thing, playing for O'Connor as well, being an offensive-minded guy. We'll see if he can continue to grow. I'd say, like, he hasn't really shown, because he hasn't been able to show any growth based on where he's been. So, like I said, maybe the purple and yellow is his breakout team, and he can be their bridge quarterback, maybe eventually put himself into, the long-term starter role just off of this 1-year deal.
Yeah, and he, as we sort of wrap up, he'll need JJ to do it.
Oh, for sure.
Like, if JJ sits this year or isn't there, it's going to be a long year for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
outside of Hawkinson and Addison, yeah, I couldn't tell you what other weapons he had outside of JJ.
yeah, I mean, Addison and Hawk are great, and he'll have Aaron Jones in the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
He has some pieces there that he has the ability to shine in Minnesota. It's going to be tough, but I know we strayed off the AFC North and gotten into a lot of the other free agency. We are going to do a whole free agency episode about a week before the draft. That will give enough of the waters to sort of cool down. We'll talk about everything that we like, what we didn't like from that, and then after the draft happens, it's really rocking and rolling towards the NFL Hall of Fame kickoff game in early August, and then we're off.
And
There's some rumors. Oh my goodness! Yeah, the Bears.
Hell yeah!
We'll see who's playing quarterback.
Yeah, JF1 baby, JF1.
And then I will say, final note, I sent it out to you guys. Write your senators, tell them this needs to be approved. Write the commissioner, say this is a great idea, best idea you've ever had, which is the NFL's talking about going to 18 games. Now, why am I bringing this up? It's because adding another week and making it so every team has 2 byes would push the Super Bowl to President's Day weekend. You know what that means? Monday's off, baby. Monday's
Free
a federal holiday.
Baby.
Yeah, and you know what? Being on President's Day, this is what the founding fathers intended for us to have Super Bowl Monday off. There's no better way to honor them.
I'll tell you what, if Aaron Rodgers is the new VP, I mean, we'll be there. We'll get that day off.
Oh my gosh, I still can't believe that. The question I did see asked on Twitter that I did laugh at is, so if Rodgers is elected in the office as VP, but then he plays in the Super Bowl, does Secret Service shoot every defensive lineman that gets close to him? I don't know. But
that's a good question.
Yeah.
I do want to put it on
thing.
Yeah, I do want to put that on the record that the draft episode I did mention, I wonder what Aaron Rodgers drama is going to come out, and I got my gift yesterday.
Yeah. Unreal. But good episode, wrapping up the AFC North. We've done the East, we've done the North. We'll go into the South next, and then we'll wrap up with the West, because out of the West, you've got both the 2-time Super Bowl defending champs and the Niners trying to get a bounce back and come back. So we'll wrap up with the division going forward. We got a lot of other episodes coming your way. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go to our TikTok, Instagram, go for our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So do appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Time to pull charts.